The key turned in the lock with a familiar click, and I pushed open the door to our small but cozy apartment, my shoulders sagging with the weight of another exhausting day. The scent of the dinner I'd prepared that morning in the slow cooker, kimchi jjigae, wafted through the air, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. Papa's home. Two small voices shrieked in unison, and before I could even remove my shoes properly, tiny bodies crashed into my legs. Oof, I laughed, steadying myself against the doorframe as I looked down at my greatest treasures. Ari, my 5-year-old daughter, gazed up at me with those impossibly large brown eyes, her pigtails slightly askew from whatever adventure she'd been on today. Sam, my 4-year-old son, clung to my other leg, his chubby cheeks dimpled with his grin. "Did you two behave for Mrs. Park today?" I asked, finally managing to slip off my shoes and scoop them both into my arms. They were getting heavier each day, these beautiful reminders of a past I'd worked hard to move beyond. "Yes," they chorused, though Ari's guilty glance toward the living room told me there might be a story there. "Mostly yes," Sam amended honestly, making me chuckle. I carried them to the sofa, collapsing onto it with them still in my arms. This was my favorite part of the day, coming home to them, to their unconditional love and chaotic energy. Being a single Omega father wasn't easy, especially in a society that still raised eyebrows at my situation, but these two made every struggle worthwhile. "So," Ari said, settling into my lap with the air of someone preparing for their favorite television drama. "How was he today?" I didn't need to ask who he was. There was only one person who dominated my post-work conversation these days, and my children knew it all too well. "Han Dion," I groaned, letting my head fall back against the sofa. "Don't even get me started." "But Papa, we want you to get started." Sam giggled, bouncing on my knee. Tell us. Tell us." And so, as I did every evening, I launched into my daily recounting of the trials and tribulations of managing the Han family mansion, and more specifically, dealing with its impossibly difficult owner. Today, I began, adopting my most dramatic voice, which always made the kids giggle. Mr. Han decided that the way I'd arranged his study was inefficient. Never mind that I'd organized it exactly according to his specifications from last week. Apparently, his specifications have specifications now. Ari tilted her head, a gesture so reminiscent of my own mannerisms it made my heart squeeze. "What did he say?" He said, and I quote, "So Chul, do you have any organizational skills whatsoever, or did you learn management from a fortune cookie?" I mimicked Han Dion's deep, authoritative voice, making it extra gruff for comedic effect. Both children dissolved into giggles. "That's mean," Sam said, though he was still laughing. "It is mean," I agreed, "but that's just how he is. Cold, demanding, impossible to please." I trailed off, realizing I was getting worked up again. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my personal motto. Stay positive, keep smiling, move forward. "But Papa," Ari said, her voice taking on that knowing tone that was far too mature for a 5-year-old, "you're smiling when you talk about him." Was I? I touched my face, startled to find that yes, there was indeed a smile playing at my lips. "That's just, I'm smiling because I'm home with you too. Not because of him." "Uh-huh," Sam said, clearly not believing me. "Papa, why do you have Mr. Han's pen?" I froze. "What?" Sam pointed to my shirt pocket, where indeed a very expensive-looking fountain pen was clipped. My eyes widened as I pulled it out, recognizing it immediately as one of Han Dion's prized possessions. A Mont Blanc Meisterstück, if I remembered correctly, that he'd once spent 20 minutes lecturing me about after I'd moved it a centimeter to the left on his desk. I must have accidentally picked it up," I stammered. "I'll return it tomorrow." "That's the third thing this month," Ari pointed out, counting on her fingers. First his coffee mug, then his scarf, now his pen. The scarf was lent to me because the mansion was cold. I protested, and the coffee mug was a mistake. "You sleep with the scarf every night, Papa," Sam said matter-of-factly. My cheeks burned. Did I? No. Well, maybe. But only because it was warm and comfortable, not because it carried a faint scent of Han Dion's cologne, that sophisticated blend of bergamot and cedar that seemed to linger in every room he entered. "I do not," I lied very unconvincingly. "And your car," Ari continued relentlessly. "Didn't Mr. Han buy your car?" "He helped me get a good deal," I corrected. "That's what employers do sometimes. It's a company benefit." "Papa, you drive a Mercedes," Ari said with the kind of skepticism usually reserved for much older children. Mrs. Park says Omega managers don't usually get Mercedes as company benefits. Mrs. Park talks too much, I muttered, though I couldn't fault my elderly neighbor for being observant. She was right, after all. The car had been unexpected. Han Dion had simply presented me with the keys one day, 6 months ago, saying something about it being more appropriate for my station and safer for someone with children. I tried to refuse, but arguing with Han Dion was like arguing with a glacier, cold, immovable, and likely to leave you frozen in your tracks. And your bag, Sam added, touching the leather messenger bag I'd set beside the sofa. That's from Mr. Han too. It was. A birthday gift, he'd claimed, though his delivery had been so gruff and his eyes so carefully averted that I'd almost thought he was embarrassed. Everyone deserves quality work equipment, he'd said, shoving the expensive bag at me. Stop using that falling apart thing. It's an embarrassment to the household. Okay, I said, holding up my hands in surrender. So maybe Mr. Han has been generous. But that doesn't mean anything. He's just a perfectionist who wants his staff to reflect well on the Han name. My children exchanged a look that I'd learned to dread, that conspiratorial glance that said they knew something I didn't want to admit. Papa, Ari said gently, taking my face in her small hands with a seriousness that made my heart ache. When was the last time you talked about anything except Mr. Han? I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it. Surely I talked about other things. My job included dozens of staff members, the maintenance of a massive estate, coordination with vendors and service providers. Except now that I thought about it, even those conversations somehow circled back to Han Dion. His preferences, his schedules, his moods. I talk about you too, I said weakly. And when you talk about us, you tell Mr. Han, Sam said. You told us yesterday that Mr. Han knows all about Sam's soccer practice and Ari's dance recital. Had I? Yes, actually I had. Han Dion had asked, in that brusque way of his, whether the children were keeping well. And I'd found myself telling him everything. Sam's improving coordination, Ari's love for ballet, the funny things they said, their favorite foods. He'd listened too, with an attention that had seemed almost intense, his dark eyes fixed on me in a way that had made my Omega instincts flutter with something I refused to name. Maybe you two are spending too much time with Mrs. Park, I said, trying to deflect. All this analysis isn't healthy for children your age. You should be playing with toys, not psychoanalyzing your papa. Papa, do you like Mr. Han? Ari asked directly, her eyes wide and innocent but knowing. Of course not. The words burst out too quickly, too forcefully. He's my employer. He's cold and demanding and impossible to please. He's an alpha with a terrible attitude and an even worse temper. He makes my life difficult every single day. We barely have civil conversations. Just today, he snapped at me 3 times before lunch. But you're smiling again, Sam pointed out. I stopped. I was smiling, wasn't I? That traitor of a smile that appeared whenever I thought about Han Dion, even when I was complaining about him. Even when I was recounting his harsh words or impossible demands, there was this warmth in my chest, this flutter that I'd been steadfastly ignoring for months now. It's not like that, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. We're not. I don't. He doesn't see me that way. I'm just his manager. A convenient Omega employee who keeps his life organized. Are you sure? Ari pressed. Was I? The truth was, I'd been so focused on just surviving, on being a good father, on keeping my job, on maintaining the positive outlook that had gotten me through my past heartbreak, that I hadn't allowed myself to examine my feelings too closely. Yes, I thought about Han Dion constantly. Yes, I'd somehow accumulated several of his belongings. Yes, my heart rate increased whenever I heard his footsteps in the hallway or caught sight of his tall, imposing figure. But that didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. Han Dion was the heir to one of Korea's largest conglomerates, a powerful alpha from a prestigious family. I was a single Omega father with 2 children and a complicated past. We existed in completely different worlds. I'm sure, I said firmly, as much to convince myself as them. Now, who wants dinner? The subject was dropped, but I could see the wheels still turning in their little heads. As we ate, and as I gave them their baths, and as I tucked them into their shared bedroom, I could feel their knowing glances. Papa, Sam said sleepily as I kissed his forehead. If you did like Mr. Han, that would be okay. We'd be happy for you. We just want you to be happy, Ari added, her eyes already drooping. You're always taking care of us. You deserve someone to take care of you too. My throat tightened with emotion. These beautiful, wonderful children. I am happy, I whispered. I have you too. That's all I need. But as I left their room and prepared for bed myself, I found my hands reaching for that borrowed scarf. The one that still carried Han Dion's scent even after weeks in my possession. I held it close, breathing in that familiar fragrance, and allowed myself a moment of honesty. Maybe my children were right. Maybe I had developed feelings for Han Dion. Maybe every complaint, every frustration, every dramatic retelling of our daily conflicts was just my heart's way of keeping him close, of giving myself permission to think about him constantly. But what could I do about it? Han Dion had never shown any sign of seeing me as anything more than an employee. Yes, he'd been generous with gifts, but he was wealthy enough that such gestures were trivial. Yes, he sometimes asked about my children, but that was just common courtesy. Yes, there were moments when I caught him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, but I'd probably imagined that. No, it was better to keep my feelings hidden, to maintain our professional relationship, to continue being the perfect manager he needed. My life was complicated enough. I didn't need to add the pain of unrequited feelings to it. I finally fell asleep, the scarf still clutched in my hands, unaware that my children were still awake in their room, whispering plans that would change everything. The next morning, I woke to an ominous silence. Any parent knows that silence from young children is far more terrifying than noise. I sat bolt upright, my instincts immediately on alert. Ari, Sam, I called, throwing off my covers and rushing to their room. Empty. Their beds were unmade, and their shoes were gone from by the door. My heart began to pound as I grabbed my phone, checking for messages. Nothing. I ran through the apartment, panic rising in my throat. Where could they have gone? The door was still locked from the inside, which meant my eyes fell on the window. Open. We were on the first floor, and the window led to a small courtyard. They could have easily climbed out. But why would they leave? Where would they go? My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Park. Saw the little ones heading toward the parking garage earlier. Thought they were with you. The parking garage. My car. Understanding dawned with a horrifying clarity. Those scheming little angels had snuck into my car. But when? Unless. I rushed to the garage, my heart in my throat, and there, thank all that was holy, was my Mercedes, still in its spot. I peered through the windows and nearly collapsed with relief when I saw two small figures curled up in the back seat, fast asleep. I opened the door as quietly as I could, not wanting to wake them, yet while I figured out what to do. They must have snuck down here last night, using the spare key I kept in the kitchen drawer. But why? Then I noticed Ari's backpack, fallen open on the floor. Inside was a child's drawing, a picture of two stick figures, clearly them, standing between two taller figures holding hands, clearly meant to be me and, oh no, Han Dion. Operation Get Papa and Mr. Han Together, was written across the top in Ari's careful handwriting. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. My children, my beautiful, well-meaning, utterly misguided children, had decided to take matters into their own hands. The question now was, what were they planning to do once we reached the mansion? I checked my watch. I was already running late. If I went back upstairs to leave them with Mrs. Park, I'd be even later, and Han Dion absolutely despised lateness. He'd once made a vendor wait outside the gates for 30 minutes as punishment for arriving 5 minutes after their scheduled appointment. Maybe I could just bring them with me? I could call Mrs. Park from the road, ask her to come pick them up from the mansion. Yes, that could work. They'd wake up, realize their plan had failed, and I'd have them safely retrieved before they could cause any trouble. What could possibly go wrong? As I drove toward the Han estate, my children continued sleeping peacefully in the back seat, exhausted from their late-night adventure. I kept glancing at them in the rearview mirror, torn between exasperation and overwhelming love. The Han mansion came into view as I drove through the upscale neighborhood, its traditional Korean architecture blended seamlessly with modern luxury. The estate sprawled across several acres with manicured gardens, a koi pond, and enough rooms that I'd once gotten lost during my first week of employment. I parked in the staff area and called Mrs. Park, who agreed to come collect the children within the hour. Perfect. I'd just settle them in one of the sitting rooms with some books and snacks, and they'd never even see Han Dion. Papa. Sam's sleepy voice came from the back seat. Good morning, troublemaker, I said, turning to look at them. Both were rubbing their eyes, confused about their surroundings. Care to explain why you snuck into my car? We wanted to see where you work. Ari said, suddenly very awake and excited. And meet Mr. Han. Absolutely not, I said firmly. Mrs. Park is coming to get you. You'll wait in the sitting room, and we'll discuss this grand adventure when I get home tonight. But Papa, Sam started. No buts, I interrupted, using my sternest father voice. What you did was dangerous. You can't just run off like that. I was terrified when I couldn't find you. Their faces fell, and I softened slightly. I know you meant well, but this isn't the place for children. Mr. Han runs a very strict household, and he wouldn't appreciate. Sochul. The deep, commanding voice made me freeze mid-sentence. I turned slowly to find Han Dion standing beside my car, looking imposing as always in a perfectly tailored black suit, his dark hair styled back from his sharp features. And those eyes, deep, intelligent, and currently fixed on the two small faces peering out from my back seat, held an expression I'd never seen before. Was that curiosity? Mr. Han, I stammered, quickly getting out of the car and bowing. I apologize for the irregularity. My children, there was an incident. Mrs. Park is coming. These are your children, he stated rather than asked, moving closer to peer into the car. Ari and Sam stared back at him with wide eyes, and I held my breath, waiting for the explosion. Han Dion valued order, predictability, and professionalism. Children in his domain were probably a nightmare scenario. But instead of anger, something almost like a smile, or as close as Han Dion ever came to one, flickered across his features. They have your eyes, he said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made my heart skip a beat. Before I could respond, Ari, my bold, fearless daughter, rolled down the window. Are you Mr. Han? Dion's attention shifted fully to her. I am. And you are. I'm Ari, and this is my brother Sam. We're 5 and 4. Our papa talks about you all the time. Like all the time. He can't stop talking about you. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Ari. It's true. Sam piped up, leaning over his sister. Every single day when he comes home, he tells us stories about you. What you said, what you did, how you made him reorganize things. He thinks about you constantly. Children, I said desperately, my face burning hot enough to fry an egg. That's enough. He has your scarf, Ari continued, completely ignoring my mortification. He sleeps with it every night. And your coffee mug. And your pen is in his pocket right now. Han Dion's eyebrows rose, and he looked at me with an expression that was equal parts amused and something else. Something that made my Omega instincts sit up and take notice. Does he now? Dion said softly, his gaze intense. I was going to return the pen today, I said weakly. The scarf too. And the mug. I just kept forgetting. Papa never forgets anything, Sam said helpfully. He's really good at remembering things. So if he forgot to return your stuff, it's because he wanted to keep it. I was going to have a very long talk with my children about the concept of helping versus making things worse. I see, Dion said, and there was definitely amusement in his voice now. Well, since they're already here, why don't you bring them inside? Mrs. Park can collect them from the house. That's really not necessary, I started. I insist, he said, and it wasn't a suggestion. Besides, I'd like to get to know the children Sochul talks about so frequently. Oh no, he'd used my first name. He rarely did that, usually maintaining the formality of Manager Lee or just Sochul when he was particularly irritated. But this was different, softer, almost intimate. I helped Ari and Sam out of the car, holding their hands tightly as we followed Han Dion into the mansion. I'd worked here for a year, but I'd never been more nervous about being inside these walls. We passed through the grand entrance hall with its soaring ceilings and traditional artwork, then through several corridors until we reached what I knew to be one of the more informal sitting rooms. It was still grander than my entire apartment, with silk cushions, low tables, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden. Wait here, Dion said. I'll have some refreshments brought. The moment he left, I turned to my children. What do you think you're doing? Helping. Ari said brightly. You needed a push, Papa. A push? You basically announced to my employer that I'm obsessed with him. But you are, Sam pointed out with irrefutable 4-year-old logic. That's not the point. You can't just... I stopped, taking a deep breath. Getting angry wouldn't help. Listen, when Mrs. Park gets here, you're going straight home, and we're going to have a serious discussion about boundaries and appropriate behavior. But Papa, Ari said, her expression suddenly serious. Don't you want to be happy? We see how you smile when you talk about Mr. Han. We see how you look at his picture on your phone, when you think we're not watching. I did not look at his picture on my phone. Except, there was that photo from the company directory that I may have saved, and possibly looked at. Occasionally, when I couldn't sleep. That's different, I said, though I was running out of arguments. Mr. Han looks at you the same way, Sam said quietly. I blinked. What? When he was looking at you in the parking lot, Sam explained. He looked at you the same way you look at him. Like you're the most important thing in the world. Before I could process that statement, the door opened. But it wasn't a servant with refreshments. It was Han Dion himself, carrying a tray laden with juice boxes, cookies, and what looked like fresh fruit. He'd brought snacks for my children. Himself, Han Dion, who had staff for everything, who probably hadn't carried a tray since. Ever? I wasn't sure what children preferred, he said, setting the tray down with surprising care. So I brought options. Ari and Sam descended on the snacks with enthusiasm, and I found myself alone with Dion for a moment as he straightened from the table. We were close, closer than we ever were at work, and I could smell his cologne, see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, notice the way his perfectly composed exterior had a tiny crack in it. Your children are very direct, he said. I'm so sorry, I began, but he held up a hand. Don't apologize. It's refreshing, actually. Most people are too afraid to be honest with me. He paused, his dark eyes meeting mine. Is it true? About the scarf? My cheeks flamed. Yes. But it's not. I mean, I was planning to return it. I gave it to you because you were cold, he said quietly. I never expected it back. But knowing you kept it, knowing you sleep with it, his voice dropped lower. That changes things. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Changes what? Before he could answer, Ari's voice rang out. Mr. Han, do you have a bedroom here? Both Dion and I turned to look at her. I do, he said slowly. Why do you ask? Can we see it? Sam asked, his eyes wide with innocent curiosity that I knew was anything but innocent. I don't think, I started. Of course, Dion said, surprising me yet again. Though I'm not sure why you'd be interested in an alpha's bedroom. We want to see where you sleep, Ari said matter-of-factly. And your stuff. Papa says you're very particular about your things. I was going to ground them until they were 30. But Dion seemed amused rather than offended. Very well. Follow me. We walked through more corridors, climbing a grand staircase to the private wing of the mansion. I'd only been here a handful of times, usually to deliver documents or coordinate with cleaning staff. The master bedroom was at the end of a long hallway, behind ornate double doors. Dion opened them, revealing a space that was somehow both luxurious and surprisingly personal. The room was dominated by a massive bed with dark silk sheets, but what caught my attention were the small personal touches. Books stacked on the nightstand, a pair of reading glasses, a framed photo of what looked like his family. Wow, Sam breathed, his eyes huge. It's so big. Ari was already exploring, peering at everything with intense curiosity. She stopped at the dresser, where several items were arranged with typical Han Dion precision. Papa has one like this, she said, pointing to a watch. That's because I gave it to your papa, Dion said, and I startled. You did? For his 6-month work anniversary, Dion said. You seemed surprised when I gave it to you. Did you think it was just a standard employee gift? Yes. It wasn't. His voice was low, meant only for me, while the children continued their exploration. Nothing I've given you was standard, Sochul. The car, the bag, the watch. I've been trying to show you how I feel for months now, but you're remarkably oblivious for someone so perceptive about everything else. My mouth went dry. How you feel? Before he could answer, Sam let out a delighted giggle. I turned to find both my children had somehow climbed onto Dion's bed and were now bouncing on it with abandon. Children, get down right now. I rushed toward them, but they were too quick, scrambling across the massive mattress. It's so bouncy. Ari laughed. The most expensive mattress money can buy, Dion said dryly, but he didn't sound angry. Handcrafted in Italy with memory foam and... Papa, come feel. Sam called, patting the bed. Absolutely not. We're leaving right now. I reached for Sam, but he dodged, and I found myself off balance, falling forward onto the bed. Strong hands caught me before I could faceplant into the silk sheets. I looked up to find Han Dion had moved with alpha reflexes, his arms around me, my body pressed against his as we both half-knelt, half-lay on his bed. Time seemed to slow. I could feel the warmth of his body, the strength in his arms, the way his breath caught as our eyes met. This close, I could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could count his eyelashes, could feel the rapid beat of his heart against my own. Papa. Ari's voice broke through the moment. Mr. Han just woke up, didn't he? I blinked, realizing that yes, Dion's hair was slightly mussed, and he was wearing what looked like lounging clothes rather than his usual formal attire. In my panic over the children, I hadn't even registered that it was barely 7 in the morning. You were sleeping, I said, horrified. We woke you up. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing, he said, his arms still around me. So Chul, your children broke into my bedroom, jumped on my bed, and basically forced us into this position. I think they're trying to tell us something. We are. Ari confirmed. Papa likes you, Mr. Han. He talks about you all the time, and he gets all smiley and happy, and he keeps your things, and he looks at your picture when he's sad. And we think you like Papa too, because why else would you give him so many presents and ask about us and look at him the way you do? Ari. I tried to pull away from Dion, but his arms tightened. She's right, he said quietly. I do like your Papa. More than like, actually. I've been trying to court him for months, but he's so determined to see me as just his employer that he's missed every signal. My brain short-circuited. Court me? But you're always criticizing me and being difficult, Anne. That's because I don't know how else to get your attention, he admitted, and for the first time since I'd known him, Han Dion looked uncertain. I'm not good at this. Feelings, romance, any of it. I know how to run a business empire, but I don't know how to tell an Omega that he's the most fascinating person I've ever met. That I look forward to coming home because I know he'll be there. That I deliberately create problems just so he'll spend more time in my office, talking to me, even if he's exasperated. That I gave him a Mercedes because the thought of him driving anything less safe made my alpha instincts go insane with worry. I stared at him, completely speechless. So yes, he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear, though my children were watching with rapt attention. I'm courting you. I've been courting you. I'm just apparently terrible at making that clear. Told you, Sam said triumphantly to his sister. Operation Matchmaking is working. You two planned this, I said, looking at my scheming children. The whole thing. Sneaking into my car, getting us into his bedroom, making me fall onto the bed. We helped, Ari said proudly. But you did the falling all by yourself, Papa. Dion's chest rumbled with what might have been laughter. Clever children. They take after you. So now that everyone knows everyone likes everyone, Sam said with the straightforwardness only a 4-year-old could manage. Can you kiss Papa now? That's what happens next in all the stories. Children. I yelped, my face hot enough to combust. But Dion was smiling. Really smiling, not the tiny quirk of lips I'd sometimes glimpsed, but a full, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. May I, he asked softly, kiss you? And despite everything, the embarrassment, the absurdity of the situation, the fact that my children had orchestrated this entire thing, I found myself nodding. His lips met mine softly, gently, as if I was something precious. The kiss was sweet and tender, nothing like I'd expected from the cold, demanding alpha I'd thought I knew. When we parted, I was breathless, my Omega instincts singing with joy. Yay! Ari and Sam cheered, bouncing on the bed again. Does this mean we get a new Papa? One step at a time, Dion said, but his eyes never left mine. Though I wouldn't be opposed to that outcome, if Sochul is willing. I need to process this, I said, my mind reeling. You really, this whole time? This whole time, he confirmed. Now, I believe Mrs. Park should be arriving soon to collect these 2 matchmakers. And then you and I need to have a very long conversation about the future. Our future. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Park announcing her arrival. But as I gathered my children, who were far too pleased with themselves, I couldn't stop looking back at Han Dion, who was watching me with an expression that made my heart race. Maybe, just maybe, my children had been right all along. The next few hours passed in a blur. Mrs. Park arrived and collected Ari and Sam, who were still giggling about their successful operation. They made me promise to tell them everything when I got home, which I absolutely was not going to do in detail. There were some things children did not need to know about their papa's romantic life. After they left, Dion and I stood in his bedroom, suddenly alone and aware of the massive bed between us. The bed where we just kissed. The bed where everything had changed. We should talk, he said finally. Properly. In my study, perhaps. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We walked through the mansion in silence, but it was different from our usual professional quiet. This silence was charged, electric, full of unspoken words and possibilities. His private study was a room I'd been in countless times, coordinating schedules and discussing household matters. But now it felt different, more intimate. He gestured to the leather couch rather than the formal chairs across from his desk, and I sat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Dion sat beside me, close but not touching, respecting my space even as the air between us hummed with tension. "I need you to understand something," he began, his voice serious. "When I say I've been courting you, I don't mean casual interest. In alpha terms, in the traditional sense, I mean I've been trying to prove myself as a worthy mate." My breath caught. Mate. That wasn't a word alphas used lightly, especially not alphas from prestigious families like the Hans. Mate meant forever, meant bonding, meant a commitment that went beyond simple romance. "But I'm a single omega with 2 children," I said, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me. "Your family would never approve. I have a past, Dion. The children's father, he left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be tied down to an omega and pups. I've been alone ever since, raising them by myself. That's not the kind of background someone like you should." "Stop," he interrupted gently. "First, my family doesn't dictate my life. I've made that clear to them repeatedly. Second, your past doesn't define you. What defines you is the incredible person you are now, a devoted father, a brilliant manager, someone who smiles through difficulties and lifts everyone around him. Third, and most importantly, I don't just want you. I want Ari and Sam too. I want all of you, the complete package." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "You don't know what you're saying. Children are a huge responsibility." "I know exactly what I'm saying." His hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt both new and somehow familiar. "So Chul, do you think I ask about them constantly because I'm being polite? I want to know every detail of their lives because I'm already halfway to loving them, just like I'm completely in love with you. You love me. Completely. Hopelessly. Frustratingly." A small smile tugged at his lips. "You've had me wrapped around your finger since the day you started working here and told me, to my face, that my filing system was an organizational crime against humanity." I couldn't help but laugh through my tears, remembering that first day. I'd been so nervous, but also determined to do my job well, and his study had been a disaster. I'd spoken without thinking, and instead of firing me on the spot, he'd looked at me with something like respect and told me to fix it however I saw fit. "I thought you were going to fire me," I admitted. "I was going to kiss you," he said. "But that would have been inappropriate, so I settled for letting you revolutionize my entire organizational system instead." His thumb stroked across my knuckles. "You have no idea how hard this past year has been, having you so close but maintaining professional distance. Watching you smile at everyone else. Listening to you talk about your children and wishing I could be part of that family. I complained about you every night," I confessed. "Ari and Sam probably know every annoying thing you've ever done." "I know. You told me about their reaction to your complaints yesterday, remember? The part where they said you couldn't stop talking about me and smiled the whole time." He shifted closer. "That's when I started to hope that maybe, possibly, you felt something too. I've been trying not to," I admitted. "You're my boss. You're wealthy, powerful, from an important family. You're so Chul," he said firmly. "The man who brings sunshine into my cold mansion, who leaves little notes reminding me to eat lunch, who rearranged my schedule 3 months ago to make sure I didn't miss my mother's birthday, who hums while he works and doesn't realize how that sound has become the best part of my day." I wiped at my eyes, overwhelmed. "This is really happening? You really want this? Want us? More than anything." His free hand came up to cup my cheek, his touch gentle. "But I need to know what you want, so Chul. I need to know if you can see a future where we're together, where I come home to you and the children every night, where I have the right to court you properly, to take you on dates, to eventually bond with you if you'll have me." "The children," I said, because I needed to be practical even though my heart was soaring. "They're my priority. They always will be." "As they should be," he agreed. "And I hope, in time, they'll become mine too. I want to be there for their recitals and soccer games. I want to help with homework and tuck them in at night. I want to be a father to them, if they'll let me. If you'll let me." "They already adore you," I said softly. "They staged an entire operation to get us together. Sam said you look at me the same way I look at you. Smart boy. Dion's thumb brushed across my cheekbone, wiping away a stray tear. So what do you say, Sochul? Will you let me court you properly? Will you give us a chance? I thought about everything that had brought me here. The heartbreak of being left alone and pregnant. The struggle of raising 2 children by myself. The fear of ever trusting an alpha again. The walls I'd built around my heart. But I also thought about Dion. The gifts I hadn't understood. The way he asked about my children with genuine interest. The scarf I'd kept because it smelled like him and made me feel safe. The smile that had been unconsciously appearing on my face every time I talked about him. Maybe love wasn't something to run from. Maybe with the right person, it was something to run toward. Yes, I whispered. I want to try. His smile was brilliant, transforming his usually stern face into something beautiful. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. But I didn't want to. I met him halfway, our lips connecting in a kiss that was deeper than the first, more certain, full of promise. When we finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I'm going to do this right, he murmured. Proper dates. Meeting the children officially as someone courting their papa. Taking things at whatever pace you need. What about work? I asked practically. I can't be your manager and what are we exactly? We'll figure it out, he assured me. You're too good at your job to lose you professionally, but maybe we can adjust the structure. Hire an assistant manager to handle the day-to-day, let you oversee from a higher level. That way there's no conflict of interest, but I still benefit from your brilliant organizational mind. You've already thought this through, I realized. I've been planning this for months, he admitted. I just needed you to finally see what was right in front of you. He kissed my forehead softly. Now, don't you have a day's worth of work to catch up on? I believe I'm expecting a delivery this afternoon that needs your coordination. Reality crashed back in. Oh God, the delivery. The new furniture for the guest wing. I completely forgot. Breathe, he said, amused. This is exactly why I need you. Even distracted by a romantic revelation, you remember the important details. He stood, pulling me up with him. Go. Work. We'll continue this conversation tonight. I'll have dinner prepared for us. Something private. I need to get home to the children, I protested, even as my heart leapt at the thought of dinner with him. Then tomorrow night, he amended. They can stay with Mrs. Park. I want you to myself for an evening, Sochul. Let me court you properly. I nodded, still feeling like I was floating. As I left his study to return to my office and tackle the mountain of work I'd been neglecting, I couldn't stop smiling. Behind me, I heard him call out. And Sochul? You can keep the scarf. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. I returned home that evening to find Ari and Sam waiting eagerly, demanding to know everything. I'd told them, in age-appropriate terms, that Mr. Han and I were going to start spending time together, and that he wanted to get to know them better too. Their reaction was predictable, squealing, jumping, and declaring themselves the best matchmakers in all of Korea. Mrs. Park, when she dropped them off, had given me a knowing smile. That man has been in love with you since day one, she'd said. Everyone could see it except you. Now, as I stood in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear for my first official date with Han Dion, I was second-guessing everything. What did one wear to dinner with a conglomerate heir who'd been secretly courting you for a year? Papa, wear the blue shirt, Ari said from where she sat on my bed, watching my fashion crisis with the seriousness of a 5-year-old consultant. The blue one makes you look pretty, Sam agreed. Mr. Han will like it. I don't need to look pretty, I protested, but I was already pulling out the blue button-down they'd indicated. It was one of my nicer pieces, fitted but not too tight, a color that Ari insisted made my eyes sparkle. Everyone needs to look pretty on dates, Ari said matter-of-factly. That's what Mrs. Park says. Mrs. Park says a lot of things, I muttered, but I was putting on the shirt. By the time Dion's car arrived, not driven by him, but by his personal driver, because apparently that's how wealthy alphas operated, I was a bundle of nerves. The children waved enthusiastically as Mrs. Park ushered them back to her apartment, where they'd spend the evening. The drive to the mansion felt different this time. I wasn't going to work. I was going on a date. With my boss, who was in love with me, who wanted to be a father to my children. My life had become a drama, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Dion was waiting at the entrance when I arrived, and my breath caught. He was dressed more casually than I'd ever seen him. Dark slacks and a black sweater that hugged his frame, his hair slightly less severe than his usual style. He looked approachable, handsome, like someone I could actually imagine being with. "You wore blue," he said as I approached, his eyes warm. "It suits you." "My children's recommendation," I admitted. "They have excellent taste." He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation I took it. His strength was evident even through the casual touch, reminding me of his alpha nature. Instead of leading me into the mansion, he guided me through the gardens toward a section I'd never explored. The sun was setting, casting everything in golden light, and the path was lined with paper lanterns that hadn't been there this morning. "Did you do all this?" I asked, amazed. "I had help," he admitted, "but I chose everything. I wanted it to be special." We arrived at a private gazebo overlooking the koi pond. Inside, a table had been set for two, complete with candles and what looked like a feast of my favorite foods. Korean dishes I'd mentioned loving in passing conversations. Desserts I'd once said reminded me of my childhood. "You remembered," I said softly, overwhelmed. "I remember everything you tell me," he said simply. "Every story, every preference, every small detail. I've been collecting them like treasures for months." We sat, and dinner was perfect. Not just the food, which was incredible, but the conversation. Without the pressure of work between us, we talked freely. He told me about his childhood, about the pressure of being the Han heir, about how he'd always felt isolated until I'd walked into his life and made everything brighter. I told him about my own past, about falling in love young with an alpha who'd seemed perfect until I'd gotten pregnant, about the heartbreak of being abandoned, of raising Ari and Sam alone, of the fear that I'd never be able to trust an alpha again. "I won't lie and say I'll never hurt you," Dion said, his hand covering mine on the table. "I'm not perfect. I have a temper, I can be cold, I'm still learning how to express emotions properly. But I will never abandon you. I will never make you doubt my commitment. And I will spend every day proving that you and the children are my priority." "That's a big promise," I said, my heart aching with hope and fear. "I don't make promises I can't keep." His thumb stroked over my knuckles in a gesture that was becoming familiar. "So Chul, I know you're scared. I know you have reasons to be. But I'm asking you to trust me. To let me show you what real courtship looks like. What a true mate bond could be." "I want to," I admitted. "But the children, if this doesn't work out, if you change your mind, then I'm a fool who lost the best thing that ever happened to him," he interrupted. "But that won't happen. I'm in this for the long term, so Chul. Forever, if you'll have me." After dinner, we walked through the gardens together. The night air was cool, and without thinking, I shivered slightly. Immediately, Dion shrugged off his sweater and draped it around my shoulders. "You don't have to," I started. "I want to," he said. "Besides, now you'll have another one of my things to keep. Maybe this one you won't have to steal." I laughed, burying my face in the sweater. It smelled like him, that cedar and bergamot scent that had become synonymous with safety and comfort. "I didn't steal them. I borrowed them. And never returned them," he teased, pulling me closer as we walked. "I notice you're still wearing my watch." I looked down at my wrist, where indeed his gift was fastened. "It's a good watch. It's an expensive watch that I chose specifically for you," he corrected. "Just like everything else. The car isn't just safer, it's the model you mentioned admiring once in passing. The bag isn't just quality leather. It's from the designer you said reminded you of your father's briefcase. Every gift was chosen with care, so Chul. They were all I love yous that I didn't know how to say out loud." We stopped walking, and I turned to face him. The moon was bright overhead, the garden peaceful around us, and in that moment, everything felt right. "I love you too," I said, the words finally free. "I think I've loved you for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it." His smile was everything. "Say it again." "I love you, Han Dion," I repeated, more certain this time. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch reverent. "I'm going to kiss you now. Please do." This kiss was different from the ones before. It was deeper, more passionate, filled with months of suppressed longing. His hands slid into my hair, tilting my head to deepen the angle, and I melted against him. My omega instincts were singing, recognizing him as someone safe, someone right, someone who could be mine. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Come inside," he murmured. "Stay with me tonight. Not for. I just want to hold you. Fall asleep with you in my arms. Wake up with you beside me." "I should get back to the children," I said, though I wanted nothing more than to say yes. "They're with Mrs. Park until morning," he reminded me. "You arranged it yourself." "One night, Sochul." Let me have one night with you. I knew what he was really asking. Not for intimacy, not yet, but for closeness. For the chance to strengthen the bond forming between us. And I wanted it too. Wanted to know what it felt like to sleep in his arms, to wake up to his face, to have one night where we could just be Sochul and Dion, without the weight of the world or our responsibilities. Okay, I whispered. One night. We went to his bedroom, and it was strange being there again under such different circumstances. The last time, my children had been bouncing on his bed and forcing us into proximity. Now it was just us, and the massive bed suddenly seemed very significant. I'll give you something to sleep in, Dion said, moving to his closet. He emerged with one of his shirts, soft and well-worn. The bathroom is through there if you want to change. When I emerged wearing his shirt, which fell to mid-thigh on me, I found him already in bed, wearing sleep pants but nothing else. His chest was muscled but lean, exactly as I'd imagined during those moments I'd let myself fantasize. He held out a hand, and I took it, letting him pull me into bed beside him. The sheets were as soft as I remembered from my accidental fall, and when he wrapped his arms around me, pulling my back against his chest, I felt safer than I had in years. Is this okay? He murmured against my hair. More than okay, I breathed, snuggling deeper into his embrace. We talked in the darkness, sharing secrets and dreams and fears. He told me about the pressure from his family to marry someone appropriate, someone from a suitable Omega family who could provide heirs without complications. I told him about the nightmares I still sometimes had, about being abandoned again, about not being enough. You're everything, he whispered fiercely. And anyone who made you feel otherwise was a fool. Sometime in the early hours of morning, talking turned to soft kisses. Gentle touches. The exploration of new intimacy. His hands slid under the shirt I wore, his shirt, mapping the planes of my body with reverent attention. Tell me if you want to stop, he breathed against my neck. But I didn't want to stop. I wanted this, wanted him, wanted to cement this bond between us. Don't stop, I pleaded. What followed was tender and passionate, overwhelming and perfect. He took his time, worshipping every inch of me, making sure I felt cherished and safe. When we finally joined together, it felt like coming home. Like finding the missing piece I didn't know I'd been searching for. Afterwards, wrapped in his arms, his scent surrounding me and his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I felt tears slip down my cheeks. Sochul. He immediately tensed, concerned. Did I hurt you? No, I assured him, turning to face him. These are happy tears. I didn't think I could feel this way again. Didn't think I deserved to feel this way. You deserve everything, he said firmly, kissing my forehead, my cheeks, my lips. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that. I fell asleep in his arms, happier than I'd been in years, unaware that the morning would bring both joy and complications. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the distinct feeling of being watched. My eyes fluttered open to find Han Dion propped on one elbow, gazing at me with such softness that my heart squeezed. Good morning, he murmured, reaching out to brush hair from my face. Good morning, I replied, suddenly shy. In the daylight, what we'd shared last night felt both more real and more overwhelming. Regrets? He asked quietly. None, I said honestly. You. Only that we didn't do this sooner. He leaned down to kiss me softly. Stay for breakfast. I need to get back to the children, I said reluctantly. Mrs. Park will be expecting me, and Ari and Sam will want to know how the date went. What will you tell them? I smiled. That Mr. Han is a very good kisser. He laughed, a sound I was learning I loved. Scandalous. Their innocent papa, corrupted by the cold alpha boss. I think it was mutual corruption, I teased. We dressed reluctantly, stealing kisses between putting on clothes. He lent me a proper shirt since I'd need to return his sleep shirt, though I noticed him pack it into a bag for laundering with a knowing look that said he knew I'd want to keep it. The drive home felt surreal. I kept touching my lips, remembering his kisses, catching his scent on my skin, feeling the pleasant aches in places that reminded me of our intimacy. When I arrived home, Mrs. Park was waiting with the children. One look at my face, and she smiled knowingly. Had a good evening, did you? Mrs. Park. I blushed furiously. Papa. Ari and Sam launched themselves at me. Did you kiss? Are you together now? Is Mr. Han going to be our new papa? One question at a time. I laughed, hugging them close. Yes, we kissed. Yes, we're together. And as for Mr. Han being your papa, that's something we'll all need to talk about together. When can we see him again? Sam asked eagerly. Soon, I promised. He wants to spend time with all of us. Get to know you better as more than just my employer. We should invite him for dinner, Ari suggested. Here, so he can see where we live and how we're a family. It was a sweet idea, even if the thought of Han Dion in my tiny apartment made me nervous. But she was right. If we were going to make this work, he needed to see all aspects of my life, including the humble reality of how we lived. That evening, I called him. The children want to invite you to dinner, I said. At our apartment. Nothing fancy, just us. Our normal life. Is that something you'd want? I'd love nothing more, he said immediately. When? Tomorrow night? I'll be there. The next day was a flurry of cleaning and cooking. Ari and Sam helped enthusiastically, if not always effectively. Sam insisted on making a welcome sign, which ended up covered in glitter and spelling Dion's name 3 different ways. Ari picked flowers from the courtyard garden to put in a vase. I cooked enough food for a small army, bulgogi, kimchi, japchae, and all the side dishes I could think of. It was too much for 4 people, but I was nervous and cooking always calmed me. When the doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m., because of course Dion would be exactly on time, the children rushed to answer it while I wiped my hands on my apron, trying to calm my racing heart. Dion stood in the doorway, holding a bag from what I recognized as an expensive toy store. I brought gifts, he said, looking almost nervous. I hope that's appropriate. You didn't have to do that, I started, but Ari and Sam were already pulling him inside, chattering excitedly. Watching him in my small apartment was surreal. He was so tall, so imposing, that he seemed to fill the entire space. But he crouched down to the children's level, presenting them with the gifts, a detailed art set for Ari and a soccer ball with fancy shoes for Sam. Papa said you like ballet and soccer, he explained. I wanted to support your interests. The children were thrilled, but what made my heart melt was how Dion listened to them. Really listened, asking questions about Ari's dance classes and Sam's team, remembering details I'd mentioned and following up on them. Dinner's ready, I announced, and we all gathered around my small table. It should have been awkward, the wealthy alpha in our modest home, the children testing him with rapid-fire questions, the whole situation bizarre and unprecedented. But instead it felt, right, natural, like he belonged here with us. Mr. Han, Ari said seriously as we ate, are you going to marry our papa? I choked on my water. Ari, that's not, we haven't, it's too soon. I intend to, Dion said calmly, as if discussing the weather. When your papa is ready. When all of you are ready. I don't just want to date your papa, Ari. I want to be part of your family. All of you. Even us. Sam asked, his eyes wide. Even though we're not your real children? Dion's expression turned fierce. You would be my real children, in every way that matters. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. And I already care about you both very much. Sam looked at Ari. Some silent communication passed between them. That twin language that siblings sometimes shared. Then Sam asked, can we call you Papa Dion? I saw the moment it hit him. The weight of what they were offering, the trust it represented. His eyes grew suspiciously bright, and his voice was rough when he answered. I would be honored. Papa Dion it is then, Ari declared, and just like that, my children had adopted him. After dinner, as I cleaned up, with Dion insisting on helping despite my protests, the children showed him their room, their toys, their treasure boxes of special things. He sat on the floor with them, genuinely interested in every rock Sam had collected and every drawing Ari had made. They love you, I said quietly, standing in the doorway and watching the scene. I love them, he replied, looking up at me. And I love you. This, he gestured to the small apartment, the happy children, the simple domestic scene. This is what I want. Not the mansion, not the wealth, not the status. Just this. Coming home to you and them every day. Later, after the children were asleep, we sat together on my small couch, his arm around me. Move in with me, he said suddenly. I stiffened. What? Move in with me. You and the children. The mansion has plenty of space. They could each have their own room, a playroom, access to the gardens. You wouldn't have to worry about rent or expenses. We could be together every day. Dion, that's huge. We've been together for 3 days. I've been in love with you for a year, he countered. And I know what I want. But, he added quickly, seeing my expression, I understand if you need more time. I'm not trying to rush you. I just want you to know the offer is there, whenever you're ready. Let me think about it, I said. Talk to the children. This is a big change for them. Of course. He kissed my temple. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next 2 months, our relationship deepened. Dion courted me properly. Dates to nice restaurants, walks in the park with the children, family movie nights at the mansion. He attended Ari's dance recital and Sam's soccer games, cheering louder than any other parent there. He met the children after school, taking them for ice cream and telling me about their days with the pride of a father. He learned their favorite stories for bedtime, their preferences for breakfast, the exact way Sam liked his sandwiches cut, and how Ari needed her stuffed rabbit to sleep. At work, we'd restructured as he'd suggested. I'd moved to an oversight position with my own office, while a new manager handled the daily household operations. It gave us professional distance while keeping me involved in the work I loved. But the question of moving in hung between us. The children were enthusiastically for it. They loved the mansion, loved Papa Dion, loved the idea of having their own rooms and a huge garden to play in. Mrs. Park thought it was a wonderful idea. Even Dion's mother, when we'd finally met her, had been surprisingly supportive. He's happier than I've ever seen him, she'd told me privately. And those children are delightful. You've given my son something I never could, a real family. But I was still scared. Scared of losing my independence, of becoming too dependent on him, of the power dynamics involved in living in his home, in his world. It was Ari who finally pushed me to a decision. Papa, she said one night as I tucked her in, are you worried about Papa Dion leaving us like our other father did? The directness of the question startled me. Maybe a little, I admitted. But Papa Dion isn't him, she said with 5-year-old wisdom. He shows up. He keeps promises. He loves us for real. I can tell. How can you tell? I asked, curious. Because he looks at you the way you look at us, she explained. Like you're the most important thing in the world. Like he'd do anything to keep you safe and happy. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. That weekend, I made my decision. We need to talk, I told Dion. We were in his study. After the children had gone to bed in the guest rooms they'd been using more and more frequently. He looked up from his work, immediately concerned. That sounds serious. It is. I took a deep breath. I want to move in. Us, the children, all of us. I want to make this official. His expression transformed, joy spreading across his features. Really? Really? But I have conditions. Name them. I keep working. I'm not going to be a kept omega, Dion. I need my career, my independence. Agreed. You're too brilliant to waste. The children come first. Always. Any decisions about them we make together, but if I say no to something, that's final. Of course. I wouldn't dream of overruling you on parenting decisions. And we take the bonding slowly. I know you want to make it official, to bond permanently, but I need time. I need to be sure this is forever. He stood, coming around the desk to pull me into his arms. So Chul, I would wait years if that's what you needed. The bonding can happen when you're ready. When you trust me completely. When you know, without a doubt, that I'm never leaving. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in his scent. I'm scared, I admitted. I know, but I'm going to prove myself to you, every single day. I'm going to show you that this is real, that I'm committed, that you and the children are my world. We're really doing this, I said, half to myself. Moving in together. Becoming a family. We're already a family, he corrected. We're just making it official. The move happened quickly after that. My apartment had never held much. We traveled light by necessity. So within a week, we were settled into the mansion. Ari's room was decorated in pink and white, with a ballet bar along one wall. Sam's room had a soccer theme and more toys than I'd ever seen in one place. My room was Dion's room. Our room now. It felt strange at first, seeing my things mixed with his, my clothes in his closet, my toiletries in his bathroom. But it also felt right. The children adapted instantly. They loved the space, the gardens, the freedom. Dion hired a tutor to help with their studies and enrolled Ari in a prestigious dance academy while making sure Sam got into the best youth soccer program in Seoul. But more than the material benefits, they loved having a father. Dion was everything their biological father hadn't been: present, attentive, loving. He went to every recital and game. He helped with homework. He established bedtime routines and enforced rules with gentle firmness. Papa Sochul, Sam said one night, about 3 months after we'd moved in. I'm glad you found Papa Dion. Me too, baby, I said, kissing his forehead. Me too. 6 months after moving in, Dion proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture. No expensive restaurant or public display. Instead, it was in our garden, with Ari and Sam hiding in the bushes, not very well, while Dion and I took our usual evening walk. "So chul," he said, stopping by the koi pond. "I know we agreed to take things slowly. I know you needed time to be sure. But I need you to know, I'm already sure. I've been sure since the day you started working here and turned my life upside down." He pulled out a small box, and inside was a ring, simple but elegant, with a stone the color of my eyes. "Will you marry me?" he asked. "Will you let me be your mate, officially and permanently? Will you bond with me and let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice?" I looked at him, this alpha who'd been patient beyond measure, who'd courted me properly, who'd become a father to my children and the love of my life. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was right. "Yes," I said. "Yes to all of it." The children burst from the bushes, cheering. Apparently they'd known about the proposal, had helped Dion pick the ring, had been conspiring with him for weeks. Operation matchmaking complete. Ari declared triumphantly. Dion laughed, pulling all of us into his arms, me, Ari, Sam, and in that moment we were perfectly, completely whole. We married 3 months later, a simple ceremony with close family and friends. Ari was the flower girl, Sam was the ring bearer, and Mrs. Park cried through the entire thing. The bonding came that night, in our room, with candles and soft music, and all the time in the world. Dion marked me gently, his bite on my neck a permanent claim, and I marked him in return. The bond snapped into place, and suddenly I could feel him, his love, his commitment, his absolute certainty in us. "I love you," he whispered against my skin. "My Omega. My mate. Mine forever." "Forever," I agreed. "For all of us." Because this wasn't just our story, it was our family's story. 2 children who'd wanted their papa to be happy. An alpha who'd been brave enough to court an omega with baggage. An omega who'd been brave enough to trust again. And in the end, love had won.